Welcome, everyone, to our show today. I'm Michelle Aubin and having a great conversation today with Linda Lang. Hi, Linda.
Hi, Michelle. How are you doing today?
Great. And we were talking about the topic for today before we hit the record button, and we came up with the idea of talking about how to rewrite your path and how to do that and different tricks and techniques, basically how to get off of one definition of ourselves and one outcome for the future and create a new one. So we were just
That's a
coming up with that idea.
pretty big topic, Michelle.
It's a big
It's a
topic.
big topic, but it's a really great topic.
And so I was inspired because I was listening to a great video by Joe Dispenza, and he goes into a lot of the science around it. And I'm not going to be able to really talk very kind of concretely the way he does about the science. But one of the takeaways from that YouTube video was that he was saying we can literally create new pathways in the brain by using our imagination. And I was really intrigued by that. And have you come across anything like that, Linda? Have you heard of
But
those?
I know that you can create new pathways by thinking new thoughts and learning new things. Um, but I don't think I've come across specifically about imagination as a tool to help you kind of switch those old tracks of thinking. And I think that's a fantastic way to do it, really.
There's science behind this, and that was the big takeaway from me with listening to this talk, was that he quoted a scientific study where there were different groups of people learning to play the piano for 2 weeks. And one group went into the room and actually played the exercises. The other group stayed home, did nothing. The third group came in and played whatever they wanted, not the exercises, but whatever they wanted. And the fourth group used their imagination to do the exercises. So they then scanned the people's brains before and after. And the ones that played the exercises had created new areas of the brain that lit up, new neural pathways. And the people that did it in their imagination did it just as well. And so that is really kind of amazing to think that people could imagine themselves playing the piano and get those pathways in their brain just like people physically playing the piano.
Well, I've actually have heard of that more in line with professional athletes and
Yeah.
performers and actors who will visualize themselves, making the shot or standing up and being successful at speaking. And they think it, they keep, picturing it and patterning it in their minds. So it becomes a neural pathway that has some depth to it. And it seems to be, make it a little bit easier for them to actually jump into that role, which makes me wonder as well, aside from the neurology of it and getting the unconscious on board, it probably also puts that out into the future to help manifest, that kind of intention thing.
It changes the molecules around us.
Mm-hmm.
This is what Dr. Dispenza is so good at talking about, because he actually talks about the quantum field. But it makes sense that if we are envisioning something repeatedly and we're shifting into that in our mind, the world reflects back to us what we are shifting into. And I'm recalling a concept from Abraham-Hicks. They call it prepaving. There's a way to prepave your experience, meaning, let's say you're taking a trip and you want to feel safe and you want to feel alert. And this is just a very mundane example. You want to have a safe journey. You can prepave it in your mind. Imagine yourself sitting in a car, feeling aware of all the things you need to notice, and, you know, do it from beginning to end in a few moments in your mind. Now, I use that with projects. I do this when there's something new I'm going to do. Like, let's say I'm going to do a public speaking event. I will imagine myself enjoying the process, and it really works. I imagine myself feeling comfortable. I imagine myself connecting to all the people in the audience. And I've actually done this, and public speaking is one of the most common fears people have, but you can use this with anything. I've done it with dietary changes. Okay, I'm going to imagine myself following through on my dietary commitments, whatever it might be. Have you ever done pre-paving?
Well, actually, it's a technique that they teach you in NLP to kind of help
Right.
build the neural pathways. So, yes, I have done it. I think probably the thing that I would really like to communicate to the audience is the importance of our thoughts and how when we think about our past experiences and negative things in the past or being focused on flaws, we're creating the neural pathways in our brain that make that more concrete, and we'll start to notice more flaws and more problems in line with these old thoughts that we think. So it really is very beneficial when we can let the past go and start where we are and move forward with a really positive projection of the outcome.
Say that again. We're going to notice more flaws. I'm not sure I caught that.
If we think about the flaws, the
Okay,
FLAWS,
right. If we think about problems, if we think about negative things, that's what we're going to notice.
that's what we'll notice,
Right.
and it will be, you know, reinforced in our thinking,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly. How we think and how we talk to ourselves and what we communicate to others really does impact our experience.
And this, what you just said about sort of not focusing on the past so much, but focusing on the present moment, is really connected to the practice of mindfulness. When we practice mindfulness meditation, we're practicing noticing the breath, which is in the moment. And I find dwelling on memories or projecting into the future can be very addictive. And mindfulness practice is so helpful with that, I have found. And I know everybody, by now, most people listening to this have heard of mindfulness. It's not anything mysterious, but I found it really trains me to be here now, and therefore able to release any old definitions of myself. And I'm really working hard on kind of working hard on just releasing old definitions, positive, negative, any definitions of myself, so that I can be free in the moment. Those
What do,
definitions tie us into something.
what does that mean to you, Michelle? Being free.
In the moment, okay, so being free in the moment means not acting from a habitual pattern that is unconscious. And, you know, we're trained to act in certain ways to cope with life. And in some ways that makes life easier because we can delegate those things to the part of our brain that just handles things. But it isn't always true or what is necessary in the moment.
Yeah, and you're not talking about autonomic things. You're talking about choices and behavior.
And they don't always feel like choices when they have become habitual.
Sometimes they're not if we don't have that conscious awareness right before
Yeah,
we take an action, then
yeah,
we're acting out of pattern for sure.
right. So by talking about freedom in the moment, what I'm talking about isn't like freedom to just act whatever way, but having the resources to be more aware and have more choices to act in ways that are necessary or most helpful or most powerful for myself. So that's how I think about that. By releasing old definitions and becoming aware of what they are in the beginning, to begin with, and then releasing them and saying, okay, now I have more freedom in how I act or react, or there's so many layers to it, but it's a process.
I think you described it very well. And as we mentioned, we had a little conversation before we hit record, and I made the comment that you stand in the place of power when you're in that place of making a decision, and you can choose if you're going to do, this or this, and you make that choice consciously, then that's a really different level of awareness than just acting out.
Yes, out of old programmed
Whether you're
reactions.
programmed or by conditions or society or family or someone else, or whether you've programmed yourself by making that choice
Yeah,
repeatedly.
yeah.
It's not about blaming anyone else. I mean, when you're in that place just before you decide, that is your place of power, and you can choose differently.
Yeah, and I'll share with the listeners, I'm currently taking your class on healing your money story, and there's a lot of what you're doing with us in there that is related to this because it's about, money for all of us is wrapped up in definitions of who we are, fears or ancestral patterns, things that were passed down to us from other generations. And what's happening in unwinding all of that is about being available for, I don't even know what that will look like, but being available for more and to show up with all of who I am and not in a reactive place on any level, right? So
Yeah.
the topic is money, but it relates to everything. It relates to, who we are.
And when you react, you know that that's old stuff coming up. When you can respond,
Yeah.
you have that choice, Yeah, it's fascinating for me to watch all the little shifts with everyone in the program, and in myself as well. It's amazing. I have a good news story actually to share because my birthday is coming up next week,
Oh,
and my sister has sent me scratch cards, like lottery
yeah.
tickets. I mean, probably, every year for my birthday for like 20 years. And I've never won anything, or if I did, it was maybe a free ticket. And I actually won $25 this year. So, woohoo. Yeah.
So you've multiplied your winnings
I shifted something in my money mind.
Something.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. So it was fantastic. Yeah, I'll have to tell her that. She'll be pleasantly surprised. I'm sure. I'm sure.
How fun.
Yeah,
And so you have gone through this process yourself
I have.
before teaching it and before doing it with other people. And what shifts have you noticed aside from money? What have you noticed in yourself
Oh,
in other areas? Like more
huge.
confidence or more relaxed, less fear? I mean, because money relates to survival issues. It relates to, so many things.
The biggest and most surprising shift for me was the level of self love and self acceptance. I stopped
Mm,
beating myself up for mistakes. I stood my ground more, or if I was compromising, I don't even know if I like that word, but meeting someone, I did it very consciously. I knew I wasn't giving up my power
right.
to make something work, but instead I was kind of stepping into it with more love for and respect for both parties. And the universe responded and started bringing me all kinds of opportunities and cash too. So it was just amazing. I think it's an amazing program.
It's almost like the universe is rewarding you for respecting yourself
Yeah.
and loving yourself.
Yeah. And it feels so good to get rid of that old weight
Yeah.
of unresolved emotions and patterns and limited thinking, and to actually build a new healthy relationship with yourself and what you deserve and what is possible for you.
Well, I know I had to go through a similar thing on my health journey, which was to make my food choices and all of my health choices, like my sleep patterns and all of those things, number one in my life, and they're non-negotiable. And looking back, I'm amazed that that ever wasn't the case. But there are ways that we chip away at ourselves, maybe because we think we have to be there for other people in a certain way, or we have to not make a fuss about food, that kind of thing. When I made that shift over time, I never expect anyone to bend over backwards for me, but I will not violate my own needs. And that was a big shift to say, I'm not, I am only going to eat healthy foods for me. I'm going to be in bed by a certain time every night. Those kind of things. I'm not going to engage in things that are super stressful. And it didn't happen overnight, but it feels
No,
like I should have always been this way, but I wasn't, so
it
now
is a
it's
journey.
it's a journey. Yeah.
You mentioned boundaries, and I think that's a fantastic topic. We'll have to save that for a future podcast.
That's a rich one. Yep. A lot to talk about with that. So thank you everyone for joining us. We would love to hear your comments. Feel free to like our channel and share your thoughts. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
And Michelle, where can people visit you on Facebook?
They can find me on Facebook, Michelle Aubin, my website, michelleaubin.com. Reach out to me. Anybody have any questions, reach out to me.
You'll find me at thoughtchange.com or on Facebook as Thought Change. Alchemy from the inside out.
Wonderful. See you all next time.
Bye for now.